Hope you didn't start yet because I can't hear anything.
Hello.
Sorry about that. I guess we will commence again because my sound was off. Because why should it even be on automatically? Okay, let us commence. I don't even know if it recorded or not because my Wi-Fi microphone was off. So the point is, we're talking over here about there's the Bnei Kahos at the end of last week's parsha that were counted. Bnei Gershon are being counted at the beginning of this week's parsha, and today's aliyah we're going to have about the Bnei Merari. All of these are families of Levi that each one had a different job in the carrying of the Mishkan. So I will begin again from the beginning of the Maimer. Nosa is right, Bnei Gershon Gam Hein, count the heads of the Bnei Gershon. Also that the Diagram Nazachim Kuditoyer, the Alter Rebbe asks in Kuditoyer, Yesh Lahavin, why I need to understand. Lam and never Bnei Gershon Gam Hein. Why does it say in the children of Gershon? Also then, just say count. What does it have to emphasize? Also, what does it come to teach you by saying also then? The point of the explanation this is in the Nasius Roish, the idea of raising the head means as follows. There's the level of brain, the level of intellect, and that needs to be raised up. It's to raise up the level of the head to the level of the will that's beyond intellect to the level known as the crown. That's the level where we have to raise up the brain to. We have to raise it up to the level of kesef. And we're going to speak about this concept of what does it mean that we are raising this up. How is this raising up taking place? On the main elevation, the main raising up is through being involved in Torah. Torah is considered the supernal will of above. So therefore, to be able to rise up to the level of Ratzon Elyon, to Hashem's will of above. So we need to connect with that will of above. What level is that will above? That's the level of Torah. Torah is Hashem's will. More specifically, even though when we talk about that through Torah one reaches to the level that's higher than the to the level that's higher than the intellect, to the level of will. But in that itself, Torah can mean Torah can be mitzvahs. So the Rebbe says there's an advantage in Torah study over mitzvahs in the fact of being able to raise up to a higher place. Because the mitzvahs, though they are also Hashem's will, so therefore, since they are Hashem's will, so by performing Hashem's mitzvahs, we are rising up beyond the level of Rosh, beyond the level of intellect, or raising up the level of intellect, all the way to the level of the will. But the mitzvahs are makif. Mitzvahs physically are something that is not something that comes part of us, it's something that surrounds us, it's something external to us. And therefore, the type of relationship we have with the oil that comes down is also in a way of maki. Therefore, the revelation does not shine down in a light that it becomes internalized into us. It doesn't become part of us. It's only an encompassing light to us. Therefore, to a certain degree, it remains external to us. The Torah is an inner light mamish, meaning it permeates us. And the fact that it's permeating us does not take away also from its very high level. And its root is also from the inner level of Kesef. So it comes from a very high level and it permeates us. So therefore, the ultimate level of Nasa Yisroish in our connection with Torah mitzvahs is specifically through Torah. So now the Rebbe goes on. So therefore, of the three families and the three children of Levi, Gershon, Kahos, and Merari, so whose job was primarily associated with Torah, therefore, the family of Kahos, that they were carrying the Oren, that in it were the tablets, were the luchas. The luchas contained the entire Torah in it, all the Torahs and Naser Sadibras included. So that's the first time where it says, raise up the head, because the true raising up of the head of the intellect, to higher than the intellect, to the level of Keser, is by the Bnei Kos. Gam Bnei Gershon, but also the children of Gershon, Kivish and also Sayidis, since they raised up, they carried the Yeriyos. The Yeriyos, those are the curtains, those are the coverings and the surrounding the curtains of the Mishkan. So that is that's the level that's encompassing mitzvah, similar to the divine light and energy that's brought down through mitzvahs that we spoke before, is the level of makiv. Therefore, also by the Gershon, it also says raise up the head, because it's also the level of makif, the level of kesef. We call Mokim Namar B'nai Gershon Gam Hey. Still annulled by the B'nai Gershon. It says also them. In other words, that they are like second place. They are only also because by them, by the B'nai Gershon, it's only in a level that is still transcendent. It doesn't have the main thing that the B'nai Kos has. The main idea of raising up of the head, raising up the intellect, to higher than intellect, says Nemar B'nei Kos, says B'nei Kos Shenosus Aluchos, that they carry the Luchos Shemeir B'chinas Pimius, that shines in an internalized fashion. So that answers the original question of the Maimer, why it says Nasa Yisroish B'nei Gershon Gam Heim, because it's only additional to the ultimate Nasa Yisroish. Who really elevated the level of intellect to higher than intellect? That's the level of Bnei Kos. But also Bnei Gershon also did through mitzvahs. Mitzvahs also accomplished that. Then the Rebbe adds additional to this, top of the next page. B'nei Gershon Mailim es Hamidus Lebchinas Midus Shalamaylim Naseichel. The B'nai Gershon myth brought down also. Don't just elevate the level of the intellect to higher than intellect, but they also raise up the emotions, which normally the level of the emotional attributes are something that is lower than intellect. Like Chassidus always explains in the beginning of Tanya, we have this, that the intellect gives birth to the emotions. Because of that, Chachma and Bina are called father and mother, or the intellect in general called mothers. So usually the emotions are lower than intellect. The job of Bnei Gershon is to raise up and to elevate the emotions that are beneath the intellect to the level of the emotions that are beyond intellect. There is a super powerful type of emotion that transcends intellect in the spheres that's part of Keser, B'chinas Zayin, Tachtoinus, the Arach Anpin. They're the 7 lower ones, in other words, the 7 midos of Arach Anpin, which is the lower level of Keser. So that's another thing that Bnei Gershon do, that their job is to elevate the emotions to a higher level of emotions. Just like Bnei Gershon, they elevate the emotions on a lower level to a higher level of emotions. But Bnei Kos, since they carry the Torah, which has to do with Chachma and Seichel, so therefore they elevate the regular level of Chachma to the level of Chachma that is higher, the level of Chachma of Keser. So again, that's why it's understood why we say Nasa is Bnei Gershon Gamheim, that even though they raise up a level, therefore we use the term Nasa, but it's not on the same level like us. So therefore, since it's not on the same level that they're raising up to like us, so therefore we only say Gamheim, also them, because it's only second to what Kahas does. That's, by the way, related to what it says, even though, if you notice, I said Gershon, Kos, Merari. The birth order was first Gershon, then Kahas, then Merari. Still in all, Kahas is said first in the end of the previous parsha. We only talk about Gershon second, because Kahas carried the Aron. And that itself, the carrying of the Aron, we see here in this Maimer, means that their elevation of the Roish was on a much higher level than the elevation of the Roish that the Bnei Gershon had. So therefore, Kahas is said first, and then Gershon is said. Now, a very interesting thing. By the Bnei Kahas, it says, Nosoi is Roish. By the Bnei Gershon, it says, also Nosoi is Roish, with the caveat or the addition Gamheim. But in today's Chumash, where it speaks about the Bnei Merari, it doesn't even use the word Nosoi. Just as Tifkoid Oisam, you shall count them. It doesn't even use Nosoi as Roish. Avla avoid this Bnei Merari, but avoid of Bnei Merari. Yira. It's in the level of awe. Merari is from the word bitterness. Bitterness is associated with the level of the awe and fear of Hashem. Since it's talking about the level of awe and fear, so we're talking about the avoida of the midah itself. Midas, we said, are derived and are below intellect. It's a level of awe. It comes down from the level of head and intellect. That's why it doesn't say about it, raise up the head, because it's not about elevating it to beyond the level of the head, but rather it's about drawing down the emotions from the level of the head. So the word Nosei Esroish does not apply by the Bnei Merari. Moisef Levi the Alter Rebbe continues to explain in Likutei Torah the Inyan the Nesias Roish Moira Lavoida B'chinas Blig B'chinas Hilach Blig Vul. The idea of raising up the head indicates a traveling without boundary. Chassidus always explains that the difference between traveling and standing still is even if a person is progressing in their avodah, but their avodah is limited, it's not truly called traveling, because they're still like trapped and limited to that particular area. The true idea of traveling is when they go out of the boundary. So therefore, Nesias Roish, since both Bnei Kahos and Bnei Gershon is traveling to a level of Keser, through different levels, Makif, Pnimi, higher level, low level, but it's still going out of the boundaries of intellect and Seder Ishtalshus and going up to the level of Keser. So therefore, Nesias Roish indicates traveling without boundaries. That's also the avodah of with all your might that it says in Kriyashma, that when it says b'chol ma'adecha, it also means going out of one's boundaries and one's limitations. Which of course, like it says about the neshamas and about a yid, I will give you travelings and I will make you travelers amongst those that are standing. That's what the Navi was told. So why does it say traveling in a plural, mahalchim? It should have said, it's talking about to the Navi. It should have said, I will make you a traveler, a mahalach, between these malachim that are called standing still. Why does it say mahalchim in the plural? Pirish mahalchim, the fact that it says mahalchim in the plural, which name in a hiluch, it's two types of traveling. Echad ayidei re'usa dolibon al. One is through the inspiration and awakening from the heart from below to above. That's the level of the children of Gershon, the family of Gershon. That we said before, they elevate the emotions. The emotions is the will of the heart. And they elevate the emotions that are below intellect, a level that's higher than intellect. Vasheni, there's another level of traveling that's not from below to above, but Aidei Torah mitzvahs, Mamai Lamata. Through Torah mitzvahs, we travel and we draw down from either the Pnimius HaKeser into the Pnimius of the person through Torah, or from Keser in general into the Makif of the person, but that's a traveling going from above to below. And that takes place through the Bnei Kos. Like we say, the Bnei Kos carry the Kalim, especially they carry the Aron, which is the idea of Torah, but also the other Kalim is symbolic of the mitzvahs. Therefore, by both the Bnei Kos and the Bnei Merari, it says the raising of the head, the idea of traveling outside of the boundaries, beyond limitations, going either from above to below, or below to above. And those that are traveling has to be amongst those are standing. So he gives a very interesting explanation to what's the standing that we're talking about over here that you need to travel amongst. In the simple sense, the Aimdim is referring to the vision that the Navi saw over there. The Malachim were standing, and the Navi was being told, you are going to be traveling even though they are standing still. The Malachim are called standing still, their avodah is limited. But over here, in the three families of Kahos, Gershon, and Merari, so Kahos and Gershon, we said, are the traveling ones. And Merari are considered the standing ones. Why? Because we said before that the Bnei Merari, they were carrying the beams, which were the walls of the Mishkan. What says about them, Atzei Shittim Oimdim, they are called standing cedar wood. Chinas Atzei Shittim, the Bnei Merari, these are the Atzei Shittim that were standing of the Bnei Merari. Shavidosam Hoisim Masa Kroshim, the avodah of the Bnei Merari, the Merari family was carrying the beams and the boards and the which made up the walls of the Mishkan. Shenasum Atzei Shittim Oimdim, that they were created and made from the standing cedar wood. It's the avodah with all your soul. That indicates the level of Amidah, because Amidah shows on bit, just like Shemoneh Esrei is a time when we stand like a servant stands before the king. The same thing, B'chol Nafshecha is the entire bittul of the person's soul. So therefore, the avodah of Nesius Roish, that is the avoida of Mahalchim, two types of traveling, whether the Kahosam or Bnei Gershon, that's B'chol Maidach. The avoid of the Bnei Merari, they were carrying the beams, the boards, they are oimed, they are not Mahal. That's the avoid of B'chol Nafshach. It doesn't say about them Nesias Roish because that's a level of going out of themselves, the level of B'chol Maidach. Up till now, this whole Ois Aleph is a summary of what the Alter Rebbe says in the Maimon, this week's Parsha Kutitayr. Now, the Rebbe is going to ask a question on what the Alter Rebbe says. But we need to understand how do you do it. It's no the entire idea of the traveling of the Yid with the Mishkan and its vests throughout the wilderness. Beginning from leaving Mitzrayim ad Boyam El Yarden Yarecha until they arrive at the Yarden on the other side of Eretz Yisrael. So, then they entered a good and broad land. What was that purpose of that? How could they live for like the Bnei Yisrael? It was the effect by the Yidden that the Yidden should attain a level of being travelers. So therefore, the Rebbe asks, how is it possible to say but by the family of Merari, there was not the avoid of traveling. They were part of the whole mission. Though the avoid of Merari was carrying the boards of the Mishkan, the beams of the Mishkan, when you just look at the beams themselves, you look at the boards themselves, true, they are about standing. They are called by the name Atzei Shittim Oimdim, standing cedar wood. There had to be by the Bnei Merari also the idea of traveling without a boundary, without limitations, because of the traveling that was in all parts of the Mishkan. Through the traveling of all the parts of the Mishkan became, or through the Mishkan in general, became accomplished. I should dwell amongst them. So Koilol Gam Karshia Mishkan. This includes that the making the boards of the Mishkan also take this trip. So it also was a state of hiluch and traveling. Shar Yodam Hu Iker Kiyama Mishkan. Through the boards is the main body. It's like the skeleton. It's the whole support system of the Mishkan. So therefore, when you're taking these boards along on this trip, they are accomplishing what this whole trip is supposed to accomplish, the idea of traveling. Therefore, we're forced to say, also by the children of Merari, there was the general idea of traveling without a boundary. They had to also be this idea that we said that going without bounds and out of bounds is the idea of raising up the head. Since their service in carrying the boards of the Mishkan was only through wagons. The loike b'nei Gershon she'etzlam hoisa gam avodas mas. Not like the b'nei Gershon, that by them there was also the avoida that was called the avoid of carrying upon their body itself. So the way the Bnei Gershon carried the things, and for sure the way the Bnei Kahas carried the things, they themselves had to carry the items. They did not carry it on wagons. The beams of the Mishkan, what the Bnei Merari did, they would carry it on wagons. What's the significance of carrying on wagons? So therefore, this was something that indicated a different type of traveling. So therefore, their traveling is connected with the level of wagons. The idea of wagons indicates the animal soul, just like the difference in a physical sense. Physically, when a person is carrying it, a person is symbolic of the Nefesh Elokis. The Nefesh Elokis is likened to a person. The wagons are driven by animals. So the fact that the beams of the Mishkan were placed on wagons, that's indicative of the animal soul, the Nefesh Bahamis. Whereas what the Bnei Gershon did, even though they were also a level of Nasa Yisroish, but it didn't so much engage with the Nefesh Bahamis, but only the Bnei Merari, who used wagons, also engaged in Nefesh Bahamis, and that's where it was their going out of bounds. It was their going of the Derech Bligvul, as we'll soon explain. Always give. This will be understood by first prefacing the explanation of the avodah of traveling without boundaries. Not by the that is something that's accomplished specifically through descending down here below. That dafkin, when we come down here into this world, is there to be found the traveling without boundaries. You remember we mentioned before that the Navi was told, I will make you travelers amongst these who are standing still. Those who are standing still are all the creatures dwelling in Shamayim, whether they are malachim or even the shamas, as they are outside of the body. Only when we descend to the body, then we acquire the level of being a mahalach, a traveler, of breaking out of bounds. The Rebbe explains, the three components to this going out of bounds that's accomplished when we come down below. One idea that's accomplished, the very traveling without a boundary. It's the love for God that the animal soul, that it attains once you refine the animal soul. So then the Nefesh Bahamis also has a love for Hashem. How come? Why does that make that the love is in a way that it has no limitation and no boundaries? Since the root of the animal soul is in the world of Torah that's higher than the root of the godly soul. Therefore, only in the Nefesh Bahamis is there to be found the many harvests and the power of an ox. It's a love without boundaries. In other words, if a human being himself were to be left to plant and plow and harvest, he would have very limited crops. Only when he harnesses an animal, an ox, so the power of the animal, of the ox, allows him to be able to harvest so much more crops. The same thing, the Nefesh Elokis on its own has a limited power of desire. The Nefesh Bahamis' power of desire is much more powerful. So when we turn the Nefesh Bahamis around and we use its desire for godliness, so then it brings to the picture a love that the Nefesh Elokis does not have on its own. It has a love without a bound. So that is the first component, that when the neshama comes down here, there's a level of going out of bounds, because down here there's the Nefesh Bahamis that has a love without bounds. Then the Rebbe adds a second aspect that there's to be found in the out of bounds love down here. The second thing is the purpose and the reason why the Nefesh Bahamis needs to travel without bounds is so it should be, we should run after you. Running also indicates going out of bounds. It's not walking. It's even a more powerful thing than even going. And it says, we will run. So we will run, Chassidus explains, it indicates that the Nefesh Bahamis' excitement inflames also the Nefesh Elokis to reach that same type of breaking out of bounds excitement of the Nefesh Bahamis. But no shall believe will also the Nefesh Elokis that is from the world of Tikkun, and he doesn't have the great powers of the world of Toyu that Nefesh Bahamis has. That Toyu the spheres over there were bleak bull. So even though the nefesh elikis doesn't have it innately, but it's infected by, if you will, it's contagious. The excitement of the nefesh habahamis that now the nefesh elikis' love is also without boundaries. Inyan Ashlishi, the third component of this is after it becomes the traveling without boundaries in the godly soul, so we will run after you. Then the nefesh rises up to its true root and source, the way it's only something a nefesh can attain. In the singular, Amel Chadara, after it says, so we will run, following that, it says, bring me. After it says we, then it goes back to the singular, bring me. In the singular, the king brings him into his innermost chambers. That's referring back to the Nefesh Elikis. Once the Nefesh Elikis has been infected with the passion and excitement and out of bounds type of love of the Nefesh Bahamis, so then the Nefesh Elikis rises even higher than that and attains an even deeper and higher connection with Hashem than even the Nefesh Bahamis brings by going out of bounds. Based on these three components that we just now explained, we're going to be able to say what are the three levels of the three families of the Bnei Levi. Is Daled line 5. These are Bnei Kof, Bnei Gרשון, and Bnei Merari. Point is, we explained the difference between the families of Kahas, the family of Gרשון, the family of Merari, Sheitzel Bnei Merari, by the family of Merari, Shamas, Shalom Oyal, Gabe Agolas. They carried the Kroshim on the wagons. The wagons we associated previously had to do with the Nefesh Bahamis, they're traveling in a way that was unbounded, was only in the animal soul, the level of the wagons. They themselves, meaning the Nefesh Elikis itself, and Nefesh Elikis was not really the traveling one, it was only the Nefesh Bahamis that was doing the travel. As opposed to the Bnei Gרשון, Nasagama Inyan Dacharech on the roots, so became also the idea that we, in the plural, will run after. The traveling without a boundary was both in the animal soul, in traveling with wagons, and also in the godly soul, avodas masa, which shows that was carried on the actual people of the Bnei Gרשון themselves, because there were certain, there were the things that they had carried in a way of the matzah on their own body. So that thing that they carried upon the matzah, so that was indicating that was also the Nefesh Elikis itself. And then we have the higher level, by the nefesh, by the Bnei Kos, it was also on a higher level of the king brings me in to his innermost chambers. In the singular again, that's the traveling without boundary that comes out of the true root of the godly soul. That there has no connection whatsoever to the animal soul, to the wagons. Therefore, their main thing that they carried, even though they carried other things as well, but the primary thing, and that gave them precedence, was that they carried the Oren. Inyan HaTorah, the idea of Torah. Since the idea of the king bringing me into his inner chambers was affected by the giving of the Torah, by the Yom Tov of Shavuos, this pasuk Mashcheni Acharecha Narutza, and Havyani Amal Chadarav, Chassidus explains Mashcheni, that's going on Yitzias Mitzrayim, Acharecha Narutza, that's the avoid of Sfiras HaOmer, and Havyani Amal Chadarav, when we're given the Torah, that's when we have the true unity in the innermost chambers of Hashem. Like we said before, the Pnimius of the Yid becomes connected with the Pnimius of Hashem, and that was something that was manifest by Shavuos. That we can add to this, Sheklolis in Hiluch Belig Vulshanas idea Yiridolamata Bavoida the Beer and Shabam the general idea of traveling without a boundary. That is accomplished through the descent down here below and the avoid of refining the animal soul specifically. This, though it's taking place now, it's primarily going to become revealed when Mashiach comes. When Mashiach comes, will be revealed the advantage of the body over the neshama. Till the neshama will be sustained by the body. And now this is only in potential. It's only concealed the fact that the neshama is being sustained by the body. But it's a concealment that's already in existence and close to the existence. There is a Chassidus explains there's two types of concealment. Something, let's say, when fire is concealed in a coal, it's very close to the top. It's very easily brought out from inside the coal outward. As opposed, not like the concealment of fire that's in a flint rock. How do you extract fire from a flint rock? It's only by knocking on it. You need to have toil and effort. But Mashiach's possibilities and potential is close to the surface and close to the surface. Like all matters of the future times. I awaited every day that it will come, meaning it's very close to fruition. Immediately they will be redeemed. The idea of tshuva is in 1 hour and 1 moment, so therefore it's very close to the surface, this experience of the neshama being sustained by the body.